Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on quite an incredible journey. We're going to peel back the layers on how Jeff Bezos built not just Amazon, but later Blue Origin, leveraging some truly distinct competitive advantages.
Hmm.
Think of this as, well, a masterclass in strategic foresight and relentless execution. We think it offers crucial insights for you, whether you're maybe an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business leader, or just, curious about how these global empires get forged.
And that's exactly why this deep dive matters so much, I think.
Yeah.
Understanding these patterns, these competitive advantages, it isn't just about admiring Bezos, is it? It's about extracting transferable lessons.
Right, things you can actually use.
Exactly. These aren't just one-off tricks.
Mhm.
They're strategic patterns you can potentially apply to your own ventures, your decisions, and really just your understanding of the business world around us. We're going to break down his journey through 7 distinct stages.
7 stages.
Each one reveals a new layer of his, well, strategic thinking.
So let's unpack this right from the very beginning, because the story starts in a way that feels almost audacious. It's 1994. Picture this. Jeff Bezos, a very well-paid vice president at a fancy investment firm, D.E. Shaw & Co.
High-flying jobs.
Totally. And he decides to quit. Why? Because he sees the internet growing at an explosive 2,300% annually, and he just has to seize that opportunity. He literally starts Amazon.com as an online bookstore from his garage.
From his garage, yeah.
The sheer audacity of that initial leap, right? What was going through his mind? I mean, what drove him to take such a massive risk?
Well, what drove him was a framework he actually called regret minimization. He literally projected himself forward to age 80.
Wow.
And he wanted to minimize regrets about not trying, not participating in what he clearly saw as this internet gold rush. This framework, it was a core competitive advantage early on because it let him act decisively. It helped him overcome that classic analysis paralysis people get with big, uncertain choices.
Yeah, the what ifs.
Exactly. And coupled with that was his immediate emphasis on a bias for action. That became an early Amazon value,
Yeah.
a willingness to experiment, move quickly, even when the path wasn't, perfectly clear.
Okay.
And his vision. From day one, it was unconstrained selection, offering millions of titles, way more than any physical bookstore could ever hope to hold.
That minimization framework sounds incredibly powerful, but was it purely logical? Or was there an emotional side to leaving that secure, lucrative job? Did he ever waver? I mean, I wonder if his neighbors ever complain about the boxes piling up.
I'm sure there were some curious glances.
Yeah.
But that regret minimization framework, that was his bedrock. It gave him the emotional conviction, really, to push past the comfort of a good salary.
Right.
And the benefits of doing it this way, this early approach, they were pretty profound. First, you got that first mover advantage. Amazon quickly established itself as an early leader in online bookselling. Second, rapid and broad customer reach. Within like 30 days, Amazon.com was selling across the U.S. and in 45 foreign countries. Just boom.
It's incredible speed.
And crucially, he established foundational trust by starting strategically with books, a standardized commodity. It was a smart move for an unknown online retailer because people knew exactly what they were getting.
That makes so much sense. So give us some real-world examples of this bias for action and that unconstrained selection playing out in those first messy days.
Absolutely. The most obvious one is Bezos quitting his VP job in '94. His boss actually advised against it, told him it was a crazy idea.
Really?
Yeah, but he went for it anyway. Then there's his personal drive out to Seattle to secure the Amazon.com domain rights himself. That shows that hands-on commitment.
Right.
And like we mentioned, that initial very strategic focus on books, they're non-perishable, they're a commodity, and there were just a vast number of SKUs that stock-keeping units, unique codes for every single title. It was a super deliberate choice that enabled that huge selection.
Okay, so who was he up against then? Who were the big players or the other newcomers?
Primarily the traditional booksellers, like Barnes & Noble. Amazon instantly offered a much, much wider selection than they could physically stock. Amazon also tried, though unsuccessfully, to compete directly with eBay through something called Amazon Auction. So that shows they were experimenting early on, even if it didn't always work.
Interesting.
And of course, there were countless other early internet companies popping up, many of which, sadly, would fail during the dot-com bubble that was just around the corner.
So for entrepreneurs listening now, what's the big takeaway from this Genesis period, from the garage?
I think the lesson from Bezos's garage is pretty simple. Momentum beats perfection. Don't get bogged down in what ifs when the world's moving fast. You just got to start swimming, act decisively.
Yeah, get moving.
Second, leverage what's unique about online. Capitalize on how digital platforms can offer fundamentally better value, whether that's selection, convenience, or speed, compared to traditional models.
Right.
And finally, focus on foundational customer value right from the start. Build that initial trust with a clear, compelling value proposition that really solves a problem for your customer.
So, with that foundation built on books and early trust, what was the next big strategic play? Amazon started expanding beyond just books, right? After going public in 97, they diversified quickly, CDs, videos, lots more.
Mhm.
And here's where it gets truly fascinating, I think. Bezos made this radical decision to forego a significant marketing budget.
Wow. To just not spend big on marketing, that's a level of conviction most companies wouldn't dare touch. What made him so sure that would work?
He literally said, if you build a great experience, customers tell each other about that. Word of mouth is very powerful. So the core competitive advantage shifted, or rather doubled down on, obsessive customer focus.
Okay.
He explicitly called this Amazon's biggest competitive advantage and the very foundation of his business model. This reliance on word of mouth meant, yeah, basically no traditional marketing budget. He believed outstanding product or service value was the ultimate growth driver.
And he seemed genuinely comfortable being misunderstood, as he put it, for prioritizing long-term customer satisfaction way over short-term profits. That conviction was just absolutely key.
It sounds almost too simple, though. Just focus on the customer. What was the hardest part about sticking to that, especially when, short-term profits weren't there and Wall Street was surely breathing down his neck?
Oh, the pressure for immediate profitability must have been immense. That was definitely the hardest part. But the benefits of his approach were pretty undeniable. It gave them a really strong competitive edge in the crowded internet space. It distinguished Amazon from rivals who were just focused on price or, flashy advertising.
Right.
It led to organic, sustainable growth through cost-effective expansion. They built a loyal customer base without pouring millions into ads. And it built enduring trust and reputation. Things like the comprehensive customer reviews, even the negative ones, cultivated deep trust. Customers felt they were getting the unvarnished truth, so they kept coming back.
Can you give us some specific examples of that customer obsession in action during that time?
Definitely. The customer review system is perfect. He defended it tooth and nail, even when execs pointed out it cost them short-term sales because a bad review killed a purchase. He argued it built long-term trust.
That takes guts.
Totally. Then there was the explicit charge less philosophy, constantly driving for efficiency internally so they could lower prices for customers. And fostering that bias for action, which led to innovations like one-click shopping, it showed that culture of rapid iteration purely to make the customer experience better, smoother.
And who were the main competitors Amazon was facing as they broadened out into CDs and videos and whatnot?
Still the traditional folks like Barnes & Noble who were just being outmaneuvered by Amazon's selection and convenience online. eBay was still a competitor, though Amazon's own Amazon auction couldn't really make a dent in eBay's peer-to-peer model.
Right, that didn't quite work.
No. And then other general e-commerce retailers who, unlike Amazon, were relying much more on traditional advertising spend rather than betting everything on the customer experience driving growth.
So what are the key lessons here for entrepreneurs then from this phase?
Well, number one, customer obsession is paramount. Making the customer the absolute North Star for every single decision builds powerful, long-term loyalty and a really strong brand. Number two, earn that word of mouth. Prioritize creating outstanding product and service value. It really is the most powerful and, frankly, cost-effective marketing tool you can possibly have.
Yeah, people talking about you.
Exactly. And finally, long-term customer loyalty trumps short-term profits. You have to be willing to forego immediate revenue gains sometimes to build that enduring customer satisfaction and trust. Over time, that creates a far more powerful and resilient economic engine.
But, rapid growth often brings big challenges. And for so many dot-coms, the early 2000s were just a complete wipeout. What was Amazon's secret? How did they not just survive, but actually thrive through that market chaos? Ah, the dot-com bust.
Bezos famously had this unusually slow-paced business plan, constant reinvestment, and crucially, that laser focus on free cash flow, not traditional earnings. He even launched Amazon Prime in 2005, even though initial models apparently said it was a terrible idea. That's bold, right? Flying right in the face of Wall Street.
This period really, really highlighted his financial discipline, especially under pressure. He essentially built what you could call a cash moat. He did this by prioritizing tight cash conversion cycles.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Basically, how quickly cash comes in from sales compared to how quickly it goes out to suppliers. He managed that incredibly tightly. It was part of an unwavering long-term investment approach. I mean, think about it. He showed immense patience by foregoing profits for over 6 years, just constantly reinvesting everything back into the business.
6 years, wow. Yeah. And this was coupled with a real defiance of conventional metrics. Bezos explicitly prioritized free cash flow, the actual cash the business generates, over traditional GAAP accounting earnings,
Yeah.
the profit number you see on a P&L statement.
Which isn't always real cash.
Exactly. He even famously enclosed his original 1997 letter to shareholders in the annual report every single year, just to keep reminding them, this is our philosophy, focus on long-term cash flow.
That's incredible consistency, and the benefits of being so disciplined through that bust must have been huge.
Oh, they were clear. First, crisis resilience. Amazon didn't just survive the dot-com bust when so many competitors vanished.
Mm-hmm.
It actually emerged stronger, able to grab bigger market share.
Mm-hmm.
This financial strength also enabled sustained innovation. It gave them the capital, the cash, to experiment without needing short-term investor approval for every little thing.
Right, freedom to move.
And it deepened customer loyalty, especially with that bold bet on Prime in 2005. Offering that immense perceived value, like free 2-day shipping back then, it really solidified their customer base and created this powerful flywheel effect.
Any specific examples from this era that really drive home this cash-focused approach?
Well, his aggressive reinvestment strategy is key. Consistently plowing revenue back into the company, expanding operations, improving logistics, keeping prices low instead of taking profits.
Yeah.
He relentlessly optimized the operating cycle, focusing on turning inventory over quickly and, crucially, collecting payments from customers before having to pay suppliers. That minimizes the capital tied up in the business. And that judgment-based decision for Prime, it was based on an intuitive gut feeling about customer benefit, even when the initial quantitative models apparently said it was a terrible idea. That speaks volumes about his conviction in the long-term customer value.
And who are the competitors or maybe the victims of this period who didn't make it?
Well, famous flameouts like Pets.com and Cosmo.com, these were actually .com ventures Amazon had invested in that failed. So that underscores the risks even they faced.
Right. They weren't immune.
No. Traditional retailers were still operating with their old models, just lacking Amazon's long-term digital vision and, frankly, their agility. And crucially, short-term focused investors. They often doubted Amazon's strategy, pressured for immediate profits.
Yeah.
They were really at odds with Bezos' whole long-term vision.
So, pulling back again, what are the key lessons for entrepreneurs from surviving that kind of downturn?
Optimize for free cash flow. Understand that cash flow, not just reported earnings, is the true measure of a company's long-term health and its capacity to innovate. It's the oxygen.
Got it.
Have patience for profitability. Be willing, if your model supports it, to defer those short-term profits for sustained long-term growth and market leadership. It's a long game. And trust your customer-centric judgment. Develop the courage, the conviction, to make bold decisions that you know will benefit customers, even if the initial spreadsheets don't immediately back you up.
That's powerful stuff. Okay, let's jump into what happened next. The mid-2000s to early 2010s, this is where Amazon really cements its reputation as an innovation powerhouse, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
This is where Amazon moved from just selling things to actually creating entire new industries. We saw the Kindle e-reader launch in 2007, totally revolutionized reading, sold out in hours.
Instantly.
But maybe even more crucially, Amazon's internal technology transformed into Amazon Web Services, AWS, which became this massive profit driver. Plus, you had self-service platforms like Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP, and Fulfillment by Amazon FBA taking off. How do they pull all that off simultaneously?
It was a pivotal time, for sure.
Yeah.
The competitive advantage here, I think, was inventing on customers' behalf. Bezos actively pushed for products like Kindle and AWS that customers weren't explicitly asking for, but which they found immense value in once they existed.
Yeah.
It was proactive innovation, anticipating needs.
Mm-hmm.
He also had this disruptive vision for established concepts. He wasn't just trying to tweak things like physical books or traditional retail logistics. He was aiming to fundamentally improve them, sometimes replacing them entirely.
Right, big swings.
Big swings. And he believed in distributed innovation. He insisted that creativity shouldn't just come from some central R&D lab, but from a large inventive team across the company, empowered by these self-service platforms. Let others innovate on your platform.
And the benefits were obviously huge for Amazon, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely. It led straight to the creation of major new revenue pillars. Kindle became huge, and AWS eventually started driving the majority of Amazon's overall profit. It massively expanded their ecosystem and created powerful network effects, where the service gets more valuable as more people use it. KDP and FBA did that. They created win-win scenarios for third-party authors and merchants, which significantly broadened Amazon's reach and selection without Amazon doing all the work.
Yeah, leveraging others.
Exactly. And it accelerated their market leadership. By embedding technology and R&D throughout the whole company, not just in one department, Amazon could innovate faster and more uniquely than pretty much anyone else.
How do they manage that, practically speaking? It sounds like a lot of complex projects running at once.
Though they famously use a work backwards methodology. For Kindle, they literally started by writing the press release for the ideal customer experience, any book accessed in less than 60 seconds. Then they figured out the technology needed to make that happen.
Start with the end goal.
Precisely. They also cultivated missionaries, not mercenaries. They hired people who were passionate about disrupting industries like publishing, people who deeply understood the appeal of the old ways so they could effectively transform them.
Interesting distinction.
And a key application, maybe the biggest, was transforming internal tools into external services. AWS grew directly out of Amazon's own massive internal infrastructure needs. Bezos saw the potential to offer that computing power and storage as a service to others, basically turning a giant cost center into an enormous revenue generator.
Just brilliant, really. And who were the competitors in these new spaces? E-readers, cloud computing?
Well, for Kindle, you had dedicated e-reader makers like Sony and later Barnes & Noble with their Nook.
Right, the Nook.
Traditional book publishers were suddenly facing huge disruption from KDP, which dramatically lowered the barrier for authors to self-publish. And in cloud computing, other providers started emerging. But AWS had such a head start, they basically pioneered and dominated that market early on. They effectively created the modern cloud market.
So for entrepreneurs listening, what are the big lessons from this innovation explosion phase?
I'd say first, innovate beyond explicit demand. Don't just wait for customers to tell you what they want. Try to invent on their behalf by anticipating future needs and possibilities they might not even see yet.
Okay.
Second, empower others through platforms. Creating those self-service platforms like KDP or FBA or AWS can unlock exponential innovation and growth. You enable a whole community to create value within your ecosystem.
Right, it scales beyond you.
Exactly. And third, integrate R&D throughout the entire organization. Technology and innovation shouldn't be siloed. They should permeate every aspect of the business to maintain that competitive edge and drive continuous growth.
That's a powerful shift in thinking. Now let's explore this idea of scaling and maintaining day one. As Amazon grew into this absolute behemoth, Bezos became almost obsessed with preventing day two. He defined day two as, and this is quite a quote, stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating painful decline, followed by death. It's almost chilling, that vision. So how on earth do you keep a giant company acting like a nimble startup?
This was all about what he called a relentless fight against complacency. His deep-seated fear of day two drove this constant vigilance, this continuous push for that startup energy and agility, no matter how big Amazon got.
Okay, but how? What were the mechanisms?
To combat this, he championed concepts like two pizza teams, these small autonomous groups, roughly the size that, yes, two pizzas could feed. The idea was speed and ownership.
Right.
And the one-way, two-way door framework. This helps categorize decisions. Is this decision easily reversible, like walking through a two-way door? Or is it hard or impossible to undo, like a one-way door? This speeds up action on the reversible ones. Don't overthink them.
Makes sense.
He also instilled a radical acceptance of failure. He famously said, if you know in advance that it's going to work, it's not an experiment. He had a passion for true, risky invention and viewed failure as just a necessary part of innovation.
Okay.
And all this was underpinned by uncompromising high standards. He believed standards were contagious and needed to be set and kept unreasonably high. Many inside Amazon apparently found them very demanding, but he insisted it was crucial.
Those benefits must have been absolutely critical for sustaining growth at that scale, right?
Oh, absolutely. It directly led to sustained innovation at scale. By treating failures not as disasters but as learning opportunities, Amazon kept experimenting boldly. They developed things like the Echo and Alexa, partly from lessons learned from failures like the Fire Phone. They avoided the stagnation so typical of large corporations. It fostered real operational agility. Those decentralized two pizza teams and the one-way, two-way door framework kept things moving quick. And those uncompromising high standards, they consistently delivered high-quality outcomes across a huge range of products and services, which just kept building trust and market leadership.
Can you give us some concrete examples of this day one culture in action? What did it actually look like inside Amazon day to day?
Well, the implementation of two pizza teams is the classic example. Ensuring teams stayed small enough to promote efficiency, clear ownership, and less bureaucracy.
Okay.
Then there's the one-way, two-way door framework being actively used in decision-making. Is launching this new product category easily reversible?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, let's try it quickly. Two-way door. Is building this massive new fulfillment center reversible? No. Okay, let's analyze that one much more carefully. One-way door.
Got it. A practical tool.
Very practical. And as we touched on, learning from big product missteps like the Fire Phone, Bezos publicly called it a necessary failure along the innovation path. That framing showed everyone internally that failure, if you learn from it, was actually accepted, even expected, as part of the process for big inventions.
And who were the competitors in this phase? Who was Amazon trying to stay ahead of by maintaining this day one intensity?
Well, indirectly, it was any established large company prone to bureaucracy and slowing down. Amazon constantly contrasted its day one mentality against that day two decline.
Right, the cautionary tale.
Exactly. More directly, you had competitors like Google, especially in the smart home space with Google Home versus Amazon Echo, and Apple with Apple TV competing against Amazon's Fire TV, battling for control of the living room entertainment hub.
Okay. So for entrepreneurs, what are the key lessons from trying to maintain this day one dynamism as you grow?
First, you have to actively combat day two complacency. Doesn't happen automatically.
Yeah.
You need to implement specific cultural and operational mechanisms to consciously avoid stagnation and keep that startup energy alive, regardless of your size.
Be intentional.
Very intentional. Second, empower fast, decentralized decisions. Push decision-making down to smaller autonomous teams. Use frameworks like the one-way, two-way door to increase your decision velocity, especially on reversible choices.
Okay.
And third, view failure as a competitive advantage. Seriously. Frame failures not as things to be punished, but as inevitable, valuable learning opportunities that fuel future invention and breakthrough successes. They're tuition payments for innovation.
That's a great way to put it. Fascinating. Okay, let's move to the next stage. Diversification and broader influence. In the late 2010s, early 2020s, Amazon's empire really expanded way beyond just e-commerce.
Yeah, it branched out significantly.
This raises an important question, I think. How did Bezos's core competitive advantages translate outside of Amazon's main business? We saw the huge acquisition of Whole Foods for $13.7 billion in 2017, massive entry into physical retail.
Big move.
Then his personal purchase of Washington Post back in 2013 for $250 million and leading its digital turnaround back to profitability. And then these significant philanthropic initiatives started appearing, the Bezos Day One Fund, the Bezos Earth Fund, alongside Amazon raising its minimum wage to $15. How does this all fit together?
This period really showcased how those core principles could be applied more broadly. With Whole Foods, you saw strategic vertical integration. It was a calculated move to control a critical part of the grocery supply chain, blend online and offline, and enhance convenience, leveraging Amazon's logistics prowess.
Okay.
His personal investment in the Washington Post demonstrated an advantage in applying that Amazon tech-first, customer-centric mindset to revitalize a legacy industry. You could call it a digital transformation of traditional media.
Right, applying the playbook.
Exactly. And the establishment of those multi-billion-dollar philanthropic funds represents leveraging personal wealth for broader impact, directing significant capital towards tackling major societal challenges like homelessness, education, and climate change.
And the benefits of these broad moves, they seem to be in such different arenas: groceries, news, philanthropy.
They absolutely are different. But the benefits were distinct in each. It led to, arguably, new market dominance, or at least a major disruption, in grocery via the Whole Foods acquisition. It allowed Amazon to quickly penetrate that market and integrate Prime benefits. In media, it resulted in a revitalized traditional news outlet.
Yeah.
The Washington Post became profitable again, expanded its digital reach hugely, and arguably increased its journalistic impact under his ownership and tech investment.
Okay.
And it resulted in an enhanced, though certainly complex and sometimes controversial, public image through those significant philanthropic pledges and the wage increase. It demonstrated a much broader societal footprint beyond just retail.
Can you give us some specific applications of these diversifications? What did Bezos actually do in these areas?
Well, the acquisition of Whole Foods itself was the big application, a decisive, calculated move into physical retail and the complex grocery sector, aiming to integrate online ordering with physical pickup and delivery.
Right.
With the Washington Post, Bezos personally funded it and actively supported hiring hundreds of tech staff to drive its digital transformation, rebuild its website and apps, and ultimately turn around its finances. It wasn't passive ownership.
No, hands-on.
Definitely. And of course, the very public launch of the multi-billion-dollar Bezos Day One Fund, focused on funding existing organizations, helping homeless families, and creating Montessori-inspired preschools, and the even larger Bezos Earth Fund, a $10 billion commitment for climate change solutions.
And the competitors in these new arenas, he definitely wasn't playing alone.
No, definitely not. In grocery, major chains like Walmart and Kroger immediately responded, stepping up their own online ordering and food delivery services to compete directly with the Amazon Whole Foods combo. In news, other prominent organizations like the New York Times were already strong digital competitors, pushing their own subscription models.
Right.
And in philanthropy, obviously, other billionaires and major established foundations like Gates or Ford are operating significantly in climate change and social impact areas.
So looking at this diversification phase, what are the key lessons for entrepreneurs?
I think one is that strategic diversification can create real synergy. Look for opportunities to expand into sectors that either complement your core business or where you can leverage your unique capabilities, maybe tech or logistics, in unexpected ways.
Okay.
Also, embrace social responsibility as you grow. As your company's influence increases, proactively addressing societal challenges becomes more important, both ethically and for long-term sustainability and brand reputation. And remember, personal investments can yield broad influence. Using your personal capital separate from your main company can allow you to extend your impact, experiment in new industries, and maybe shape different sectors.
That brings us to our final stage, future vision and Blue Origin. This is truly a fascinating shift, isn't it? From running Earth's largest store to aiming for the stars.
It's a huge shift in focus, yeah.
In 2021, Jeff Bezos stepped down as Amazon CEO, becoming executive chairman, explicitly to prioritize Blue Origin, his private aerospace company, which he actually founded way back in 2000.
Yeah, it had been going for a long time already.
And Blue Origin has this incredibly ambitious goal, making space travel accessible and ultimately enabling humanity to live in huge, free-floating space colonies. What does this tell us about his ultimate long-term vision? It's almost sci-fi.
It really speaks to a lifelong obsession realized. Space exploration has genuinely been a childhood dream for Bezos, inspired by Star Trek and the Apollo missions. Now it's his primary professional focus. This deep personal conviction is what drives that sustained long-term commitment, despite the enormous costs and risks involved. It's also just an unbounded vision for humanity's future. He talks about enabling trillions of humans to live and work in space, often framing it with the idea that stasis and rationing are the only long-term alternatives if we stay confined to Earth. The scale of ambition is just unparalleled.
Trillions of people.
Yeah. And critically, it's about cultural transfer and reinforcement. He's very deliberately injecting Amazon's rigorous, results-oriented, high-velocity culture and key former Amazon executives directly into Blue Origin to accelerate its progress.
So he is taking the Amazon playbook, effectively, and applying it to rockets in space. That's quite a strategy.
That seems to be exactly the plan. And the intended benefits are clear. Accelerated space development. His direct, focused involvement, plus that infusion of Amazon's operational culture, is aimed squarely at speeding up Blue Origin's progress and making it more competitive. There's obviously the potential for monumental long-term impact if his vision plays out, by addressing humanity's potential resource and growth limits through expansion into space.
Right.
And practically his name, his vision, and his deep pockets are attracting top aerospace talent and significant investment, fueled by that sheer ambition and his clear personal commitment.
Any specific examples of this cultural transfer to Blue Origin that we can point to?
Well, Blue Origin's official motto is Gradatim Ferociter, Latin for step-by-step ferociously. That really encapsulates that patient yet aggressive long-term approach to complex engineering challenges, very much in line with Amazon's day one persistence.
Okay, step by step, ferociously. I like it.
Yeah. Then there's this strategic leadership transfer, bringing in top former Amazon executives like Dave Limp, who used to run Amazon's entire devices division, as Blue Origin's CEO. That's a clear move to streamline operations and instill that Amazon rigor.
Right, importing the culture via people.
Exactly. And finally, his continuous personal funding. He's been systematically selling billions of dollars worth of his Amazon stock each year, specifically to fund Blue Origin. That demonstrates a profound, ongoing financial commitment to making this long-term dream a reality.
And of course, the elephant in the room, the big competitor in space.
SpaceX, absolutely. Led by Elon Musk, SpaceX is Blue Origin's most direct and, frankly, formidable rival right now, especially given their much higher launch cadence to date.
Yeah, they seem way ahead in some ways.
In terms of operational tempo, yes. But you also have other established aerospace manufacturers like United Launch Alliance, ULA, and Northrop Grumman as competitors or potential partners, and government space agencies like NASA, who Blue Origin also collaborates with on projects like lunar landers. It's a complex landscape.
So wrapping this all up, what are the ultimate lessons for entrepreneurs from this future-focused, space-bound vision?
One is about dedicating yourself to lifelong passions. Once your foundational businesses are maybe more stable, aligning your primary focus with those deep-seated long-term passions can unlock energy for completely new breakthroughs. But it requires incredible discipline and persistence, often over decades. Another is about transferring proven culture and practices, successfully taking the operational DNA, the cultural elements that worked in one company, and strategically injecting them into a new venture can significantly accelerate its performance and build new competitive advantages. Don't reinvent everything if you don't have to.
Right. Leverage what worked.
Exactly. And finally, be prepared for scrutiny when you pursue grand visions. If you aim to do something genuinely world-changing, especially something involving vast resources or societal shifts like moving humanity into space, expect and prepare for significant public, ethical, and political scrutiny. It comes with the territory.
What an absolutely incredible breadth of journey we've covered. From a garage startup selling books online to literally aiming for colonies in space. It's truly mind-boggling how that consistent thread of customer obsession, thinking long-term, and relentless innovation can be applied across such vastly different ventures.
It really is remarkable. And Bezos often talks about day one, not just as a phase, but as a perpetual state of mind, a culture you have to choose every single day. So maybe a final thought for you listening. While Bezos' strategic blueprint is undeniably brilliant, it's also important to acknowledge the other side. His intense emphasis on hard work, relentless pace, and extremely high standards for employees has drawn significant public attention and, frankly, heavy criticism regarding working conditions and employee treatment, particularly within Amazon's vast operational network.
Right. That's a crucial piece of the full picture.
It is. It's a complex reality that adds another critical layer to understanding the full scope and the true cost, perhaps, of his impact and success. It's something to really consider as you think about applying any of these lessons.
A truly thought-provoking point to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Jeff Bezos' competitive advantages. We hope this has given you a shortcut to being well-informed, maybe offered some surprising facts, and just enough interesting discussion to keep you hooked.
It was great discussing it.
We invite you back for the next deep dive, where we'll continue exploring complex ideas and hopefully finding those aha moments together. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on quite an incredible journey. We're going to peel back the layers on how Jeff Bezos built not just Amazon, but later Blue Origin, leveraging some truly distinct competitive advantages. Think of this as, well, a masterclass in strategic foresight and relentless execution. We think it offers crucial insights for you, whether you're maybe an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business leader, or just, curious about how these global empires get forged.
And that's exactly why this deep dive matters so much, I think.
Yeah.
Understanding these patterns, these competitive advantages, it isn't just about admiring Bezos, is it? It's about extracting transferable lessons.
Right, things you can actually use.
Exactly. These aren't just one-off tricks. They're strategic patterns you can potentially apply to your own ventures, your decisions, and really just your understanding of the business world around us. We're going to break down his journey through 7 distinct stages.
7 stages.
Each one reveals a new layer of his, well, strategic thinking.
So let's unpack this right from the very beginning, because the story starts in a way that feels almost audacious. It's 1994. Picture this. Jeff Bezos, a very well-paid vice president at a fancy investment firm, D.E. Shaw & Co.
High-flying jobs.
Totally. And he decides to quit. Why? Because he sees the internet growing at an explosive 2,300% annually, and he just has to seize that opportunity. He literally starts Amazon.com as an online bookstore from his garage.
From his garage, yeah.
The sheer audacity of that initial leap, right? What was going through his mind? I mean, what drove him to take such a massive risk?
Well, what drove him was a framework he actually called regret minimization. He literally projected himself forward to age 80.
Wow.
And he wanted to minimize regrets about not trying, not participating in what he clearly saw as this internet gold rush. This framework, it was a core competitive advantage early on because it let him act decisively. It helped him overcome that classic analysis paralysis people get with big, uncertain choices.
Yeah, the what ifs.
Exactly. And coupled with that was his immediate emphasis on a bias for action. That became an early Amazon value, a willingness to experiment, move quickly, even when the path wasn't, perfectly clear.
Okay.
And his vision. From day one, it was unconstrained selection, offering millions of titles